Hey friends, I finished a travel mini album that I've been putting together. I started this a few weeks ago, and this is of a recent trip that my partner and I took to Kansas City. So similar to the list album that I did, I created the album out of one of the envelopes from a previous travel product release, probably from last year. So it was this cute large envelope with these geotags, and what I did is I trimmed it down to, I think it's about 7 by 7, and used this and kept the flap on the back of this page here so you could use the string to kind of close the album. And I used my power punch to create holes here, and then I put in 2 of these metal rings. This was quite a large envelope, and so I did trim off a little bit here and used some of the geotag from the scrap that I didn't use, and just kind of used my sewing machine to put that there just for a little added detail. So I saved a lot of ephemera from the trip, including a paper bag, and I liked the font of Kansas City here, so I just cut up that bag, used this as my title page, date stamp. And what I really tried to do with this album is use up a lot of materials that I had been kind of saving in my stash. So this was really kind of a challenge for me to, like use up stuff. So on the back of the paper sack, I just adhered this map paper and put a little, sewed a little pocket here so I could put in some information about why we're taking this trip and some of the details around that. So I slipped that in here. I used random page protectors and kind of trimmed them to make them work. So this was like I think maybe a 6 by 8 page protector that had the 2 by 2 squares, and I just trimmed it down so it would fit in here. So everything's like different sizes, and it created kind of this chunky album, which was kind of the aesthetic that I was going for. I had a super old transparency of the United States map, and so I used kind of enamel dots to show where we're at in Nebraska and kind of the route to get to Kansas City, and a few pictures along the way. When we got there, we went immediately to go eat because those are our priorities. So we went to this really great restaurant called Port Fonda. This was one of the cards on the table where you're supposed to kind of leave feedback for the restaurant. And of course, I grab anything paper related because I know I'm gonna put it in my scrapbook. But this was really fun because you got to rank like how good the restaurant was. So I put a smiley face there, the date, we were there for dinner and drinks. And then I talked a little bit about the food we had. I have that Kelly Perky stamp, that happy hour stamp with all of the cocktails, and we had quite a few margaritas. That was really fun. Put a picture on the back of the menus with our margarita, and of course I snagged a business card, which I usually do. This is an old Studio Calico transparency, so I just stuck that in there and a picture. I did use my Posca white pen. I love writing on photos and other things. I'll show you where else I use this, but it was really fun to kind of write around this cork emoji. Here I have a picture of our breakfast and this cute little cafe that we ate at. Again, just going through my stash and finding journaling cards that I've had for a really long time, and talked a little bit about the breakfast that we had. I did use a lot of things from the Adventure Story kit. I had a lot of things left over from that kit. I was a guest storyteller, and so I had quite a few materials. So I cut out some stars and stitched those on. Told a little bit of a story about going to the Kansas City Workhouse, which was super fun. This was a chipboard camera album because it already had the holes and it came with some pattern paper. I have no idea where I got this. I just know that I've had it for a really, really long time, like maybe 2010, 2011. So what I ended up doing, again, this was cardboard. I spray painted this navy, put a map transparency behind it, piece of chipboard. I stamped the click, 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 and then again, I used my Posca pen to write "See, Go, Do" around the rim there. And then I backed that with a photo, which I think is really cool. And I had some old stickers and stuff that I put in here. some journaling about that adventure. We stopped at this chocolate shop and got these delicious fancy chocolates. So I talked about going back to the hotel and eating those and relaxing. Created a little flip up here with some vellum and a little bit of journaling on the top of that. This is a picture from our hotel. This was the digital kit that I had for one of the foodie collections. And so what I have here is actually one of the menus from Joe's Barbecue where we ate at for dinner that night. And I wanted to put something on the front of the menu to talk about like this meal and why Mark picked it. He loves barbecue, and so he's really looking forward to this, but it had to be pretty big. So I ended up taking one of the 3x4 journaling cards. I made it larger, which I like that it has this big bold title. These colors kind of matched this side here. Cut up some journaling cards and then just added my text in Photoshop and then printed this off. And then that could go on the front of the menu. And I stamped what I had and what Mark had, and then put a little bit of a picture on the back here. This is another one of those 6x8 page protectors. This came from like a scrapbooking kit from Studio Calico way back in the day, and I never had used it. I hoarded it because I thought it was really cool, and I'm like, now's the time to use it. So I ended up cutting it in half so it could fit within the 2x2 page protector. So some pictures, I used the tags, a lot of the tags from the Adventure Story kit. This was actually a 12x12 page protector that had 4 6x6 pockets, and so that just fit perfectly in there. So I told a little story about how I get up early, Mark likes to sleep in a little bit later when we're on vacation, and I find the local cafe, coffee spot, and bring a book. And then the real reason we went to Kansas City was to go to IKEA. So I ended up telling a big story here. I had these big alphas from a past kit, so I did IKEA here. I saved the receipt from our trip, so I just punched that, put that in here. Of course, iconic, you have to get that photo. Journaled a little bit about our trip, put a tag on the top of there, and then of course I have a picture of Clementine when we got home. She always gets into my bag. So yeah, so this was just like a really fun project. I have a lot of time being here at home, and so I wanted to tell the story of this trip, even though it was just a weekend, short trip. Really fun to put this mini album together.